night by Zons. The time has come. On the air since 2009. The independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Check 1, 2, 3, boys and girls. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. This is your old pal, Critical Failure. We're going to talk some video games. We're going to listen to some chip tunes. We're going to have ourselves a good old time. Let's start things out with Chip Love. Chip Love, boys and girls. The song's called Demo Scene Time Machine. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. What a time it's been. It's been a while since I've been able to say this, but we're going to Tarantino it and go back in time. Sherman, please set the Wayback Machine to, I don't know, 2 nights ago? 2 days ago? 6 or so in the morning, 6:30 in the morning. Let's just see how it goes. Stick with us. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Alright, boys and girls. It is 6:30 in the morning. It's Thursday, right? Thursday. I got some tea. We're going to see what people are saying. Okay. What's your opinion on the What's your opinion on the retro mini console fad that happened like 2 years ago? All right. I thought they were weird when they came out. For me, in my opinion, was that the whole concept of the retro consoles just seemed like a panic to deal with the fact that the Raspberry Pi exists. I mean, they were something that would have been awesome 10 years ago. Let's see what people are saying. One guy says, it died too soon before we could get an N64 Mini. It was the one retro console I was looking forward to since N64 emulation is relatively bad. And Nintendo could have provided a better quality official emulator. Yeah, that's it's funny. I remember talking to Hemrock about what we thought would be on the N64 Mini. I also think there was a couple of really bad ones that kind of brought the whole trend down, particularly the PS1 Mini. Let's see what some of the other responses are. Stupid, all of them were terrible. Great way to get authentic USB controllers to use with PC emulators. That is hilarious. Alright, let's see what else we got here on the internet. How do we fix the horror genre? For goodness sake, mods. Wait, hold on. Hold on a second. One person says, with bullets, one dev at a time. Let me settle this. Make games scary. Walking and collecting notes with spooky background noises does not equal a horror game. Any attempts to shove a plot down your throat also ruins the experience. Make monsters extremely powerful but have some reliable yet situational ways to fight back, while relying on running around and hiding sometimes. Occasionally scripted segments can go a long way, but as can jump scares, but overusing them will ruin a game. I agree with that. The fact that you call it a horror game is not what makes it a horror game, right? I think back to the games that consistently gave me nightmares when I was young. It was Doom, I think, was the most, and it wasn't because of any cutscene or anything like that. It was because it was a game that earned a reputation for being a game that's not to be trusted. You know what I'm saying? That's a game where you'll see the key in a quiet room, and the second you pick it up, all the walls start tumbling down, and an entire army descends right on you, on top of your head afterwards. That was scary, man. There's things that were just emergent to the gameplay that made it scary. So I think what this guy's saying has some truth to it, especially about the really powerful monsters. I think about the best couple of Resident Evil games I played, the Resident Evil 2 remake, and then the Resident Evil 1 remake. The zombies were a force to be reckoned with, man. Ugh. Clock Tower. All of the Clock Tower monsters were, nigh unbeatable. Let's see what else we got. Speaking of Resident Evil, here's our next topic. Mikami on fans who like RE1's camera and controls. I get embarrassed and I ask them to stop. Resident Evil boomers BTFO. Never before has a group of fans ever been so thoroughly destroyed. Gotta say, I feel that one right in the feels. That sucks. I liked those old Resident Evil games. But let's face it, I also know that I'm alone on that one. Next one, Resident Evil 6. It's not even that bad. That bad. It's not bad at all. No, man. Resident Evil 6 is a good game. It has solid mechanics that shine best in Mercs mode, but the campaigns are too heavily scripted to enjoy subsequent playthroughs. While 5 has less depth, it offers more consistently enjoyable experience. I think I would agree with that. One guy says this is the closest we're going to get to a John Wick game. I liked it. I liked it a lot. Alright. Next. Oh, here's a good one. This is from NBA 2K. Imagine paying $70 for a game with forced, unskippable ads. As many are aware, in recent years, ads have been integrated into 2K TV segments. Yesterday's 2K TV ad placement impacted our players' experience in a way we did not intend, as these ads are not meant to run as part of the pre-game introduction. This will be fixed in future episodes. Thanks for your continued feedback, NBA 2K. Yikes. Whew. Sip of tea for NBA 2K fans. Watching an unskippable ad as part of boot up. I can't think of a more dissuasive thing than an ad. Could you imagine, like, every time you loaded up Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on the PS1, watching like a Claricel ad or something like that? And it's a $70 game. Ugh. No thanks, man. Next, holy goodness, I just found out all of Oblivion's music is uncompressed MP3 files and folders. This stuff's gonna be in my new work music. Good for you. That's pretty awesome, man. I did not know that, actually. I'm interested to know if that's the case with Morrowind as well, because I like the Morrowind music very much, particularly the introduction theme. I love it that all the responses to this one, though, are just people piling on this person. Literally, how new can you be? Tell me more of your prowess and your discoveries and feats. I saw a mud crab the other day. Disgusting creatures. Good times. I enjoyed that one. What else do we have? What are some horror games I can play on a toaster? That's a good one. Speaking of horror. Let's see if I can throw some out there before we read any of the responses. Horror games that can be played on a toaster. Well, the original Alone in the Dark series is a bit of an antiquated one, but worth playing. If you've never played it before, if you don't mind emulating, there was a lot of really good horror on the PS1 that you can get running very easily. Silent Hill, you got the old Resident Evil games, but even apart from those, there was the first couple of Clock Tower games. I'm thinking of a specific game, but it just went out of my head because it's so early in the morning. Hard time keeping a thought in my head. But let's see what some of the replies are. Penumbra and Amnesia, any horror RPG Maker game, American McGee's Alice. I don't know about RPG Maker games. I've played a couple of decent, like fun little experiences, but nothing that I would say would stack up to, the old PS1 era. Next reply, Dead Out, Night Cry, White Day, the original, Silent Hill 2 and 3. Emulate Silent Hill 1, Resident Evil 1 through 3, CVX, Dino Crisis 1 and 2. That's right, I forgot about Dino Crisis. Parasite Eve 1 and 2. Paratopic, Space Between, Lone Survivor. Lone Survivor is a pretty good game. Detention, World of Horror, No One Lives Under the Lighthouse. I think that's it. There's a couple more that are just lists. Plenty of old DOS and 90s Windows games. So games like Duke 3D Blood, Heroes of Might and Magic 3, Jagged Alliance 2, Desperados, to name some of my favorites. I find a lot of Windows games work surprisingly well on Windows 10, and DOS games are otherwise easy enough to emulate or just buy from GOG. Somebody replied to that one with, read the original post again. Yeah, I would agree with that. One more list of toaster-worthy horror games. Sanitarium. I think that's been in my collection forever, and I don't think I've ever played it. Isle of the Dead. Phantasmagoria. Phantasmagoria is an interesting one because I remember sitting with a friend of mine when I was a junior in high school at my buddy's house, and we were doing that thing where at the time, this is when like gateway computers and stuff were big, so we were sitting at his like workstation, had his battle station at home at his place, and with this great big CRT computer monitor, just sort of clicking around on the internet. And I was looking around at the CDs that he had around his desk, because that's what we did in those days. If you had, if you were into PC gaming, then you had a stack of like PC gaming CD-ROMs, because the CD-ROMs were, for the most part, required. Right, I could install Warcraft 2, and then when you wanted to actually play it, you had to put the CD in. So I was looking around at the CDs, and there was Phantasmagoria. Phantasmagoria. By the way, the physical version was a CD set. I don't remember how many it had, but it was a double disc container. Probably had like 4 CDs in it or something. A lot. And I remember him telling me that game is too disgusting for me to play, man. That's the most horrified horror game I've ever seen. That's Phantasmagoria. I was interested years later. I didn't play it at the time, but years later, like when GOG first surfaced, Phantasmagoria was a GOG game, like since the very beginning almost. So I had been interested in that one. I even think I acquired it at some point, but I never once loaded it up, and I had kind of forgotten about it until probably last week. I was cruising around on YouTube just looking at stuff, and I found like an old death scene from the like CD-ROM era that intrigued me. The old Hollywood FMV death scenes, and sure enough, it was from Phantasmagoria. So now I would kind of like to try it again. We'll see how it goes. What else did they say though? Dark Seed, Light and Darkness, Gabriel Knight. Gabriel Knight, who, by the way, we had the composer here on TCR several years back. Night in the Woods, Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, Zombinator, Maniac Mansion. Yeah, I guess that could be considered a horror game. I would say at least like a family-friendly spooky game. Day of the Tentacle, Grim Fandango, Dungeon Keeper. I don't know if I would call Dungeon Keeper a horror game. Shivers, Seventh Guest, Brain Dead 13. Yes, that is a silly yet spooky game. Lots of FMV goodness. Get on YouTube and look up the Brain Dead 13 death sequences. There's like 30 minutes of unique deaths, just one after another after another. The Horde, Waxworks, Harvester, that's a fun game. Realms of Haunting, Bloodnet, Castlevania. Would you call Castlevania a horror game? I don't think I would. I think I'd call it a horror-themed platformer. It's themed like the old monster movies, but there's no way Castlevania is a horror game. Planescape, Monster Train, Darkest Dungeon. That's quite a list. A lot of good horror that you can play on an old PC. Okay. What else we have in the way of topics? How are we doing on time, by the way? 14 minutes in? That's not too bad. This one is one that I have been thinking about for a while. This guy says, "Behold, the boss from MGS3, the best female video game character ever written." I disagree with that one. One of the first responses, not really much competition. I don't even think she's the best female character written in the Metal Gear Solid series, personally. Meryl from the first Metal Gear Solid was a much more interesting character. She had a lot of flaws. He was all messed up inside, but was still, for the most part, like a believable person. She didn't have to be, she wasn't some weird anime monster. That was a character that, like, I truly didn't know where the story was going with Meryl. I think that made her really interesting. Nothing against the boss, though. The boss was a good way to wrap up Metal Gear Solid 3. And then, of course, the rest of this thread devolves into arguing, as it usually does. One thing I'll say about the boss, though, she's supposed to have a cesarean scar that starts on her collarbone, which is not how that works, by the way. Is that all I have? No, a couple more of people screeching on the internet. What is the best RPG of all time, and why is it Ultima 7? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now? Everyone listening to this can name a better RPG than Ultima 7. I never beat Chrono Trigger. I can tell you Chrono Trigger is a better RPG. I can tell you a better computer RPG. Any one of the... excuse me. Any one of the Wizardry series. Wizardry 6, better RPG than Ultima 7. But why would you say is this the best RPG of all time? Let's see what we have. Fun story which can be followed at one's leisure. Interesting side quests with actual useful rewards. Flexibility on how you approach problems. Most quests can be solved in a number of ways. Comprehensive item system. Most stuff can be interacted with, moved, used, even destroyed. Clever use of items can allow access to hidden treasure troves. Can just say forget it and live in a shack and bake bread from stolen wheat all day. It has its issues. Auto combat is, of course, mostly terrible. But every game really worth playing has nitpicking. It can be nitpicked to a crazy degree. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. To be fair, my experience with the Ultima series is mostly on the early side of that. I played a lot of Ultima 1, played a little Ultima 4. Tried to get Ultima 2 working, but I couldn't. I don't know how much I've played Ultima 7. I think that might be one that I just acquired and loaded up once. But on the other hand, all of these points that he's giving, I mean, you could really... These are things you could say about any game. Fun story, which you can follow at your leisure. There are side quests. There's an inventory management system. All right, let's be fair. Those are points that some games do botch. But, I don't know. This just sounds like somebody who played this game at the right time, at the right age, and that was the game that left a mark. It's a phenomena that Darabka likes to call, it's one of the chosen games for this person. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that kind of thing makes for interesting discussion when you're talking about which games are objectively the best games and which, you know what I'm saying? Because there's no way that Ultima 7 is the best RPG of all time. It's just not happening. I think we got 2 more quick topics to shoot through, and then we will be done seeing what people are arguing about. Best arcade cabs to emulate on MAME. What are your favorite arcade cabs to emulate? Why do you like them? Cheers. First response. Platforming, Run and Gun, Rolling Thunder, Shinobi, Shadow Dancer, Ghouls and Ghosts, Metal Slug. Belt scrollers, I hate that term. Final Fight and Konami Aliens. I don't call them belt scrollers. I'm so sorry. I can't get down with it. They're beat 'em ups. Fighting games, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Samurai Showdown 2, Mark of the Wolves, Shmups, R-Zone, Rising Stuff, Cave games, Taito games. That's a pretty decent list. Personally, for me, when it comes to MAME, I don't do a lot of MAME. to be perfectly honest. Even as somebody who emulates, I never really got down with MAME. I tried it a couple times, but the games I usually end up going back to time and time again are Dig Dug for some reason, and Darkstalkers. I play a lot of the original arcade version of Darkstalkers when it comes to MAME, and City Connection. But not because those are great games. It's just because that's what I end up with. Like, a lot of the games on this list that this person talks about, Final Fight, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Shinobi, those are all great games, but I usually just play them, you know, if I'm going to play those, I go for their console counterparts. You know what I mean? Street Fighter Alpha 3 is a good game. I play it on the PS1 if I'm going to play that game. Cave has some great games, though, man. Dodonpachi is so good. Oh, my gosh. That's one thing I miss about MagFest being canceled this year, is every year at MagFest, there's a couple of things that I do just like every single year, and one of them is play through Dodonpachi. And, yeah, looks like we won't be able to do that this year. I can play it on Steam, but you can't credit feed on Steam. It's not the same. You can play that game for about 30 seconds and then get game over. Alright, very last one. Excuse me. Who's your favorite retro game composer? For me, it's Tommy Tallarico. The industry really is indebted to his contributions. You know, that's another thing. When it came to composers, I was never really one of these guys who can name the composers that go along with the games. I have an appreciation for video game music for sure. You know, being a chiptune guy and being somebody who grew up with games like Mega Man and stuff like that. They left their impact on me too, no doubt. It's just that I never really took the time to learn their names. I'm so sorry. I know Gabriel Knight, right? Because the Gabriel Knight games, now I'm having a hard time remembering this guy's name. I feel really bad about it. That was a guy I had the opportunity to talk to. And that's how I know I know that guy. I can't remember his name. I know he was in a band called the Scarlet Furies. And he did the entire Gabriel Knight series. He talked about working with Sierra and being in charge of putting the Space Quest games, making them available for lower platforms at the time. So trying to like translate existing sounds into more primitive bleeps and bloops. I'm so sorry, sir. I can't remember your name at 6:53 in the morning on a work day. I'll look it up. Maybe if I remember, I'll I'll put it in after the fact when I loop all this together. I'm gonna be honest though, I can't see that happening. That's all the stuff that I have open. I opened a bunch of tabs, just trying to see what people were screeching about. Oh, there is one from Reddit. One, I opened a tab saying, with the headline, Apple rumored to be making a $5,000 gaming PC. Whoa. First of all, that's a rumor. Second of all, Apple making a gaming PC? I don't know, man. They're going to have some compatibility issues. At this point, Apple can't just, like, barge into the gaming market because they'd have to make some sort of effort to make themselves compatible with existing PC games. Do you know what I mean? If you buy a Mac now and you hook Steam up, there's a couple of games you can play. But only a couple. You know, you're going to be able to play TF2, you're going to be able to play Dota. That's probably about it. You know? We'll see, though. We'll see. I don't have a story in connection with this. I have a headline that says it's a rumor. And you know how the internet rumor mill is. You got to take everything with a grain of salt. Because at this point, anyone's going to say anything. And there's no standard of truth. There's no consequences for just saying something random. But that's something random that I did here. I also heard a rumor that the next Xbox console is going to play Steam games. That would be interesting. Steam boxes are a thing of the past. Do you remember those a few years ago when people were buying Steam boxes and we had Steam OS and that was a thing? Steam machines? Yeah, those kind of went away. People say those came about as a way to bully Microsoft into stopping making like Windows 10 a closed system. But put it to you this way. If they make a new Xbox play Steam games, there's no way it's going to play my Steam games. Right? If I buy one of these Xboxes, I'm not going to be able to play Civilization 3 on it. It's just not happening. You know, maybe they'll make it play a few select Steam games, or maybe they'll make it play the console port Steam games, or something like that. But we'll have to see. Only time will tell. I did think that was interesting, though. We'll see what comes of it. With that, boys and girls, I'm going to sign off here. I'll send you back to the studio. Here we are back again in the studio, feeling nice and comfy. Yes, indeedy. We're going to listen to some more chiptunes. But first, before we go down that road again, I just want to take a minute to thank the sponsors. This is a Patreon-sponsored program. Yes, that's right. If you want to make sure TCR comes back every single week, you too can pitch in and become one of the Hall of Distinguished Gentlemen. They are Hemrock, EmeraldRangers.com, Tecmoballs, Dorabka, Konstantin Kelman, and Eric Controller. To these gentlemen, I offer early access to the show and a little bit of recognition here. Thank you guys so much for keeping the lights on, and I hope you're enjoying the party. Alright, before we do the fail bag tonight, let's go back to Chip Love one more time. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Stick with us. Hemrock, our good buddy, writes us, "Greetings and salutations, Critical Failure. Thank you as usual for another episode of TCR. I appreciate you playing one of my recommended chiptunes. I like the longer episodes and I enjoyed your conversation with Sendu. I hope to see more guests in the future." Yeah, man, that was a good time. That went really smooth in my opinion. I'm glad you enjoyed it as well. Also, Sendu, if you're listening, I'm still curious to know what is your favorite Sega console? What's your favorite Sonic ROM hack? Sendu, I think you briefly spoke about your first RPG on the Sega Master System. What was the name of it? Thank you for the trivia, Sendu. I never knew about the fan art of Sonia that accidentally ended up in Sonic and Sega All-Star Racing. That's pretty funny stuff. I think Sendu mentioned the power-based converter for the Sega Genesis. Just as an aside, I believe this can work on some of the clone systems, FYI. Another alternative for your listeners would be the Power-Base Mini, which can essentially do the same as the Sega Master System to Genesis conversion, but in small form factor. This product has unfortunately been discontinued. It was previously carried by Stone Age Gamer. Both you and Sendu discussed the Logitech PS2 Imitation controllers. I too have a pair of these controllers. Mine are the old school ones with numbers on the buttons. I think Logitech stopped production on these. However, I saw one of the colored button variety in Target this past week. I'm sorry to hear about the Dreamcast shirt falling apart. I bought that off eBay nearly a decade ago, so it's on the old side. I'm glad you got to enjoy it for as long as you did. It warmed my retro gaming soul when I saw you wearing it at MagFest. RIP, by the way. Yeah, it's good times. In your conversation with Sendu, you brought up modding a sports game to make it like the XFL. Well, CF, you should be happy to know that this has already been done, and check out this ROM hack of Super Tecmo Bowl that features the XFL. Yes! Yes! Let's immediately open this link. Okay. It's from it's a link to a video from 2010, which is unfortunate because that means it's the first run XFL, and not the roster that I'm familiar with, which would include like the DC Defenders and the Battlehawks and all that. Let's push ahead just a little bit. I want to see the roster. Los Angeles Extreme versus the San Francisco Demons. I love it. I still want to get it, even though it's first run XFL. First run XFL was lame, by the way. The second run, which was brought to a close because of the COVID outbreak, actually had some quality football. And I'm not much of a sports guy. All right. Well, let's get back to the email. I wanted to clarify my statement about the J. Arthur Keen's band. I'm not naive enough to believe that J. Arthur himself or whoever the frontman for that band personally declared a copyright strike against you. I get that. He obviously registered some automated copyright claim service. But wasn't the song that you played freely available on his Bandcamp? Last I checked, all the music on Bandcamp is name your price. And that usually means you can name $0.00. Well, that's not always true. It is true. I think in that case, I was able to snag that one. But it doesn't necessarily give you the rights to use it in a commercial product or to use it in a production. And also, there's a lot of stuff on Bandcamp that they charge you for. It's up to the user whether or not they want to charge you money. But be that as it may, let's get back to the email. Anyways, what I'm getting at is why, as a small independent musician who offers his music for free, be bold enough to register these songs on a copyright service. Yes, it is his prerogative to do so, but he is liable to piss off fans more than he is to stop any significant cash loss. Seems like such a jerk thing to do. I've lost respect for him. Yeah, you know what? I gotta agree. I think it is a jerk thing to do. He's a bit of an odd duck. Like, he would make... I followed him on Bandcamp for a while, and he would make vinyl runs, very small vinyl runs of like some of his past tracks, and I was always interested in getting one because he gets like a 45 or something like that. And then one day they were always sold out, but then one day I was at work and I got the notice that a vinyl release from J. Arthur had just dropped, like in the last 10 minutes or whatever, and I got on and it was already sold out. And so I realized what was happening was he was pushing out these vinyl releases in extremely small numbers. And at that point, when I realized I could get the alert and get right in and still miss it, I kind of gave up. And then I smashed that unfollow button. Nothing personal, man. Pample Mouse is still a really good album. Back when he was more chiptune-y. There's a lot of good stuff in Pample Mouse. It's short, but good stuff indeed. Have you purchased a new Raspberry Pi? Would you pick up one of the new ones, for example, Raspberry Pi 4 with 4 or 8 GB RAM, or would you pick up one of the older ones? I have not yet purchased a Raspberry Pi. It depends entirely on the application. I don't feel like I need one for an emulation machine, like I got the last one for, but there are a number of reasons to get one still. I've been interested in giving some amateur DJing a try. You guys know our boy Desm101 posts DJ sets occasionally on his YouTube channel. They're always really awesome to check out. And I've looked at these like entry-level DJ controllers where you got a couple of turntables so you can sync up tracks and stuff. Problem is, those don't actually hold any music. In order for them to work, they have to be connected to like a laptop or something. But you can build a small station to go along with it with a Raspberry Pi. Get a Raspberry Pi. You put some storage in it to hold some tunes. You get the little screen that goes on top of it, so the whole unit is essentially the size of an old Game Boy. And then there you go. You hook your controller up to that, and you can, do what you got to do. There's also some synth projects you can do with a Raspberry Pi. The thing is, you start talking about synth projects on a Raspberry Pi, the bottom falls out in the system requirements when it comes to that. If you're just making it power a bleep bloop machine, you do not need the horsepower that you need to like play a Dreamcast game or something like that. So I've had some interest in getting a Raspberry Pi again. Excuse me, but I'd have to do some requirements gathering first. I'm not sure that I need the newest version, to be perfectly honest. I see people building synthesizers with the Raspberry Pi Zero, and it works just fine. That's the one that's much cheaper, but has much fewer bells and whistles. Does less powerful, but it's smaller, cheaper. Doesn't have any GPIO pins. You have to solder those in by yourself, which is not a big deal anymore. But we'll see. Let's see. Still thinking about doing a room tour on the YouTube ends. Yes. Let's try and get that done this week if I can remember. For the one console that can fit on your office desk, I cast my vote for PS2. That's a good vote. That way you can have access to a huge number of both PS1 and PS2 games as well as DVDs. For that one it might actually secretly motivate you to play Suikoden in order to finish the Suikoden review. You never know, my friend. I like the Thunder Force 4 covers that you played from the Famicom Collective. Does this collective have more stuff? All I found was the Thunder Force album. Yep, same here. Seems weird to disappear after such a strong showing. I have to think that group came from like some other website somewhere that just happened to use Bandcamp to host their album. Because not only do we find the Thunder Force album, but the Thunder Force album's got a lot of different people on there, and there's no communication on that website at all. There's no evidence of any other individuals gathering and collaborating and, hey, I want to get on that album. When's the new album coming out? None of that. I mean, typically you don't see that too much on Bandcamp unless you're looking at discussions or something. I don't know, but it's not really a Bandcamp thing, I guess. I don't know. I don't know where that album came from, but I get the feeling that it's from a community that's hosted elsewhere. All right, back to the email. In a bit of retro gaming news, it appears that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is finally being re-released. I previously owned this on my old Xbox 360. It should be available sometime later this year on all modern systems. I'm not sure if it will be released on Steam, but probably will eventually. CF, since you like River City Ransom, I think you'd really dig this game. Soundtrack is performed by Anamanaguchi during their heyday, which is a super nice touch. Yeah, I actually got that on my PS3, believe it or not. It is a good game. I never played it to completion, but it has a good vibe to it. A little bit more, how can I say this? When it comes to River City Ransom, the original RCR, it's got a very distinct Japanese feel to it. Whereas all that's absent from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It feels Western, very Western when compared to River City Ransom, but the gameplay is absolutely there. You can tell that the inspiration was very strong. And no doubt Anamanaguchi in their heyday. Let's see. Also in the news, earlier this month, Taito and Columbus Circle released a limited run printing of physical cards for the Darius for the Mega Drive. Unfortunately, it looks like it'll probably run you close to $90 after taxes and shipping. Yikes. I've been thinking a lot about Final Fantasy lately, and I've been playing through Final Fantasy IV, which has made me want to play Final Fantasy V. I miss the job system. I think Final Fantasy V might be my favorite in the series, right up there with 6. Do you have a top 3 Final Fantasy games of the mainline series? Probably 7, 9, and 3. Not in that order. 9 first, and then 7, and then 3. Those are my favorites. Have you tried the Civ 2 scenario by chance? I haven't in a while, but I should because it is awesome. I want to see the most updated version. If you could only have one of your consoles with all the games you currently own, which console would you keep? PC is excluded for this thought experiment. Which one would I currently keep? I turned around and looked at my consoles, and all I could think about was what I feel like playing right now. You know, that's excluding, like, digging into the deep thought of, well, you know, the PS2, I've got a pretty rounded collection of games for that thing, man. But I think it might actually be the PS2, believe it or not. Now, let's go back here. He says, with all the games you currently own, that's the wording he uses. That means we're not talking about necessarily the libraries of the respected system. So, for example, Dreamcast has got a lot of amazing games on it. I only really own one Dreamcast game, so that's out. Super Nintendo's got a lot of great games on it. I've actually got some decent Super Nintendo games, but my collections are very small. So that one is also out. I don't enjoy the NES as much as I used to. I still like it, but when I play the NES, I'm usually going back to it in small doses. It's been a long time since I've really been able to have hours and hours sessions of NES. So if the only system I keep, NES is out as well. I think it might actually be the PS2. Yeah, you know, I could play some Tekken 5, little Twisted Metal Black. Yeah. Could sit down with Final Fantasy X2 one more time. Yeah, maybe it'd be the PS2, I think. Keep rolling retro. Hemrock. Hashtag BBNMMW. Monday Night Morrowind. Hashtag, oh yeah! Hemrock, brother, good to hear from you, man. Hope you're doing well. I should do Monday Night Morrowind again. That sounds like a fun way to spend the evening, personally. How would you want me to handle that? Should I start from scratch again? Because I feel like I went back and started a new Morrowind character like fairly recently. Do you remember when I was talking about... I was interested in crossing the 100-hour mark in Morrowind, and I went through creating a character and basically playing the first handful of hours again, and I installed your Lighthouse mod and a bunch of mods off of your list. Can I just use that save? Can we just go with that? I don't feel like I could deal with playing the first couple hours again. I just want to jump in like midway through. I don't know. Let me know what you think. First comment on YouTube comes from Rajesh Rajandaran. He leaves one on my Tiger Electronics handheld games video. I remember playing the Karate King. Not familiar with that one, but yeah, I think most of us remember some sort of Tiger Electronic game floating around in their childhood. Awesome, man. I'll have to look that one up and see what it's like. Actually, let's take a look now. Karate King is what he says. Tiger Electronic Karate King. And we're loading here. Should be just a few seconds, and we'll take a look at what we got. Yeah, there's pictures of it. Vintage Tiger Electronics Karate King handheld, $12. I don't think I've ever seen this one. It's a slick looking thing. Think more like the baseball type era of Tiger Electronic games. So it looks like they just started to take that shape that we're all familiar with when it comes to Tiger Electronics. Definitely one of the earlier ones. The artwork on it looks very cartoony. Something from like the Sega Master System type art, except that it has a nice colored background as opposed to the white grid that Sega Master System games had. Karate King, super awesome. Back to the comments. Kaiser. Yeah, Kozlob. Looks like the comment I left contained the audio comment. It got blocked since it was a link only. I kept the link to the audio comment here with the comment notes, so hopefully it does not get blocked again. Awesome. Let's take a listen.
Oh, so you've been getting into Battle Block Theater with your kids recently, huh? Just to let you know, the game company that made Battle Block Theater is called the Behemoth, and they're responsible for Alien Hominid, Castle Crashers, Battle Block Theater, and I think their fourth game ended up being Fire Emblem-like strategy RPG, I think. I never played that one, but I played their other 3 games, and I definitely know a fan of that company for a while. Actually, if you don't know, they originally started on Newgrounds making Flash games, and I think the first game, Alien Hominid, ended up being one of the most popular games on Newgrounds when it was made as a prototype on Newgrounds before they made it into an actual game on the PS2 and GameCube and Xbox 360. And since you have an Xbox One, you could definitely have their whole catalog of games on that one system, since all their games are on Microsoft platforms. Actually, I think that's the reason why I never ended up getting into that fourth game, because it never ended up coming out to the PS4, and I'm not really into much of a PC guy, so I don't really think that's an option for me. But definitely check their games out, because they're a company that really doesn't just stick with one genre. Every game they make is a practically new game that is definitely something you haven't seen from them before, except for the game they're working on now is just going to be a reboot of Alien Hominid, so I'm kind of disappointed about that. And I'm even more disappointed because it's going to be on the Xbox Series X and PC only, so I definitely won't be able to play that game unless they port it to the PS4. Oh yeah, I've been listening to some old TCRs lately because I've been running out of podcasts to listen to, and I just stumbled upon a random episode, and it featured a segment from the Corner Pub. You remember those guys? Do you still keep up with Awful Falafel and Casey? Because I remember a couple segments that you had with those guys are pretty funny. I know they were definitely not safe for work, but they were some pretty good segments. Actually, I think one of the funniest segments was you had a 12-year-old boy stumble on the server once. He didn't know what the capital to Hawaii was, but he knew who the actor who played Harry Potter is, though. So that was pretty funny. And also in that TCR that featured the Corner Pub guys was talks of you making an audio commentary track for Indie Game the Movie. Geez. For something that hasn't aged well, that movie sure doesn't really put into a light of what those guys actually really were with their true intentions, with Jonathan Blow saying that on his next game he's going to implement strong DRM features because The Witness was pirated by a lot of people, even though that game was successful with practically making all of its money back as soon as it was released, and Phil Fish quitting the video game industry forever just because some bad things were said about him on a podcast, and Team Meat ended up separating with one of the guys leaving on bad terms. I would guess maybe because the other guy was ending up being a egotist. Geez, sometimes you can't tell what happens to people once they start showing their true colors later on in the future, huh? I want to clarify a little bit more on a previous comment I left about Phantasy Star Online 2 and Phantom Dust. I think for Phantasy Star 2 Online, it's technically free if you play online by yourself. Playing with friends, you're going to actually have Xbox Live to do that. Because I know for the PS4, I can play Fortnite, Monster Hunter World, Final Fantasy XIV, and Final Fantasy 15 multiplayer for free. It's just I only could play with strangers, so if I want to play with friends, I would actually have to pay for the online. But I'm sure for AAA games like Call of Duty, Halo 5, and GTA Online, you actually have to pay the online fee for that. And the same thing is for Phantom Dust, where you could play online for free, but you only could play with strangers. But you want to play with somebody like Death Adder or Sendu, you're going to actually have to pay the Xbox Live fee in order to play with them. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. And shout out to Sendu. I want to personally thank you, man, for providing CF with an Xbox One. Now he's finally able to get into the 8th generation of consoles, right when it's just about to die out with the PS5 and Xbox Series X next month. Which, that's a good thing, because you know what that means, CF. You'll finally be able to get into this console when all the games are basically going to be on clearance, because everybody's probably going to want to clear out their shelves for the new consoles now that they're going to be releasing soon. So it's a good time to get into it, man. And Sendu, I have a question. Since I know you're a big Shenmue fan, did you ever end up getting Shenmue 1 and 2 HD on the Xbox One? Because I know I have a copy of that for the Xbox One, even though I don't own an Xbox One and I don't plan on getting one anytime in the future. But if Shenmue 3 does actually end up going on the Xbox One, I'm probably going to do the same thing of buying a copy, but not the actual console. Sendu, give me your Xbox One list. I'm curious what you got on that console, because I know one game that I was kind of curious about when the Xbox One first launched was Crimson Dragon, because it was a spiritual successor to Panzer Dragoon. So I'm curious if you have that game or not. And I want to get your take on this, CF, since I know you were big into Minecraft, but Steve from Minecraft is apparently going to be a playable character in Smash Brothers. So I just want to know, what are your thoughts on this? Does it bring a tear to your eye knowing that a game that you were into 10 years ago finally is getting some representation in Smash now? Steve is going to be in here, and I'm kind of scared and worried if Fortnite guy is going to be the next one to be announced. I don't know how I feel about this, because now all I know is that all these Gen Zers are going to only know Smash now because their favorite character, Steve from Minecraft, is in it. I'm also curious, CF, did you ever get into Smash Brothers by any chance? Because I remember years ago, you were supposed to set up a game night in the Mono community. I think Smash was on that game list because everybody had a copy of it. But I guess that ended up fizzling out in the end because stuff just ended up happening. I want to also give a shout out to Hemrock. Hey, Hemrock, how's it going? Did you ever get into Smash Brothers 2? And if not, what's your favorite fighting games? I'm just kind of curious to hear what you have to say about that. I'm asking all this Smash questions because I never really got into Smash Brothers too much after the 64 version, because when Smash on the 64 came out, I used to have a lot of times where I used to hang out with like a large group of people at their house or something like that. But after the 64 Smash, less and less people I knew ended up getting into it. And I think now if I ever ended up getting the new Smash Brothers, I would only maybe know one or two people personally that would be willing to play it. Last but not least, I recently made my first podcast appearance on DOS recently. So if you ever want to hear me on a full podcast, check out Death Adder Super Show episode 93. I don't know what the exact title of the episode is, but you could probably figure it out if you scroll through the latest episode, since I think it's episode 93 is the latest episode as of October 10th, 2020. I made my appearance on there because recently Death Adder has been swinging around the idea that he might be ending DOS soon. So I wanted to make a appearance on there before he ended up closing the gate on that permanently. So I'm finally glad to be a part of DOS history by being a whole segment on his podcast. Actually, we were able to make enough content to last the whole podcast episode. So if you want to hear me and Death Adder yammer on for like an hour and 20 minutes, and definitely check it out. So that should be it for now. Same as always, try to stay healthy and make sure to avoid any kind of dangers that are out there in the outside world, all right? So see you in the next episode.
Paul, Zach, man, good to hear from you, brother. Now, a good portion of that we were able to tackle based on the notes last week, but there were a couple of things that I wanted to add. Newgrounds. It's cool to hear you talk about Newgrounds a little bit, because I remember them being such a popular and in thing when I was young. I'm familiar with Alien Hominid being probably their most popular game, but I didn't know that that's where it was from. What else do you have? Oh yeah, the Corner Pub guys. Now, I mentioned last week that I don't keep up with them, but I think it was Kirby was the young guy who about Hawaii. That particular event was New Year's Eve in 2012, and we were doing corner pub trivia, and Kirby, I think, was like the younger cousin of somebody else who hung out in the group, so he was like one of the bros, even though he was very, very young. He stayed in the group long enough that eventually his voice changed and he didn't sound like that anymore, but it happened like overnight. So one day I was like, "Hey Kirby," he was like, "Hey man, what's up?" Yeah, it's good times. What's the capital of Hawaii? Hawaii? But he knew who Daniel Radcliffe was. Also, you mentioned the concept of doing a movie commentary for Indie Game the movie. I think it'd be even more relevant now that we know where all those guys ended up. I knew the Team Meat had split up. I didn't know they split up on bad terms. I thought they just split up. I know that Edmund McMillan's a bit of an odd duck. An odd duck indeed. And I never really cared much for his art style. Nothing personal. It just never clicked with me. It's one of these guys who draws things. He makes art that's not supposed to be beautiful. The art that he makes is supposed to be off-putting. And I get it. That's a legitimate form of expression. Jello Biafra was a big fan of that kind of art as well, and I was somewhat of a Dead Kennedys fan for a while, so I get it. I get that. It just, in his particular brand, didn't click with me. How about it, Sendu? Shenmue 1, Shenmue 2 for HD collection. Did you get them? Finally, you talked about our game nights playing Smash and stuff. I think that was around the time we were talking about X-Link Kai. It was like 2 or 3 episodes in a row. We were trying to get something together with X-Link Kai. But then we found out that in order to make it work, whoever's hosting has to have has to be able to port forward, which I can't do because I'm locked out of my router. Just like a teenager. But that's okay. I even went for... Where's that? I bought Jack X Combat Racing for the PS2 so that we could do that. And I still have it up on the shelf. If you wanted to play Smash, we could find some other way to do it. Like, you could look up Fightcade. Are you familiar with Fightcade? Oh, you're not much of a PC guy, I guess. I don't know. If we can find some way to get a game night going using the tools we have, I would still be down. It's just, to your point, we're all from different generations, different sides of the gaming spectrum, so to speak. I'm a PC guy, you know. And you like what? You like the consoles, the video game consoles. But don't despair. We'll make it work somehow. Thanks for hitting back with that audio comment a second time so we didn't lose it. Hope you're doing well. Always nice to hear from you. Macamenus writes, the tomfoolery of you and Professor Frank both put Jerry Terrifying and Death Adder 83 to shame. The clickety-clacking in this episode is off the charts. Thank you so much. In response to Sendo, I'm fairly sure the Wii can do updates. Nintendo is picky about it. I know WADs for downloaded games can be updated. Nintendo can push stuff to the console. I think those Mario Kart banners, weather, etc. I'm curious whether it had something to do with the build on the disc. Maybe Sega did something different. Have space for one console on your desk, but you can't decide which to place. Why, it's the NES, of course. That flat top will allow a nice steady surface on which you can place your Featherlight Model 2 Sega Genesis. In the end, the console of your choice is the one that a bully in Pete and Pete would prefer. Genesis open face sandwich configuration. Or maybe Seganess. Yeah, that's you got a point there. I actually was thinking about the Sega Genesis today. I'm overdue for getting that thing out and giving it a spin. That's the only one I got from Mecha Manus. Hope you're doing well, man. Always good to hear from you. Thanks for listening and staying as part of the gang. Kaiser Cade writes, those Famicom Dragon Ball Z games you mentioned, fun fact, they were not Japan exclusive. They got a very obscure PAL region port, but not in English. The same happened to the Mega Drive and Sega Saturn ones as well. I really should pick some of those up. That is interesting. Wow, I never knew that because I missed... The only time I encountered those was like just getting into emulation, back when emulation was brand new. They were the first like Japanese import games. Not the first, but some of the first Japanese import games I ever got to see. First Japanese import game I really ever got to see was the Super Nintendo, the Super Famicom version of Valis. Buddy mine had the real thing. And then the first emulated game I ever saw was Wanpaku Graffiti, which was also the first, not just the first emulated import game, but the first time I ever saw an emulator running. It was my buddy playing Wanpaku Graffiti on Nesticle, the MS-DOS port of Nesticle, which was pretty cool, man. Good times. So I think that moment on, the second emulation came into my life. That's when imports became a possibility. Kaiser goes on to say, I miss hanging out with the gang as well. Yeah, we got to do something. It's cool to see you show up in the comments again. My goodness, Kaiser. Awesome to hear from you, brother. Much appreciated. Thanks for taking a little bit of time to stop in and check up on things here in the old clubhouse. Hope you're doing well, man. Hope life's treating you good. And that is it. I think that's all the comments we got over on the YouTube channels. YouTubing's channels. How we doing time-wise? A little over an hour. I think we made it. Well, you know what that sound means. Time to wrap it up for another week here on Tiger Claw Radio. Thanks so much to everybody who's continually listening after all this time and all the shambles that my YouTube channel is in now. Big thanks to all the commenters for giving me some back and forth. I hope everybody's staying safe through all this stuff. Quarantine and the pandemic, it ain't over yet. So don't let your guard down. Keep taking care of yourself. Keep staying healthy. Make the right choices. You know. And play some video games. Don't forget to have some fun while we're all stuck inside. Missing the outdoors. I don't miss it one bit, man. I'm gonna play some games for the rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next week.